Mass Effect, one of the most beloved RPG series of all time. In May of last year, BioWare re-released the original trilogy to the praise of many. Since then, I've already played through the entire trilogy 2 full times, and so when I went to play it again, I wanted to give myself a bit of a challenge. And so I decided to ask myself the question, can I beat Mass Effect 1 at level 1? Well, not exactly. See, in Mass Effect, you can't stop yourself from leveling up, and since I was playing this on console, I couldn't mod out XP gains or console command myself back to level 1. However, I could avoid putting any skills that I earned by level up. So the only skill points me and my squad mates could use are the ones that we have at level 1. Equipment also has a leveling system, but unlike player levels, equipment doesn't gain XP as you use it. Instead, you find better equipment from killing enemies, opening boxes, or buying them from shops. Any equipment I find without a 1 plastered next to it is banned for this challenge. And, as a quick note, I'm not going to be going every item that I ended up using, however I will go over a few of the key items that I got. The only things that I cannot prevent are my health going up every level I gain, and my reputation scores automatically adding skill points to them. However, since enemy damage and protection scales with me, the few extra hit points don't really matter, and the bonus reputation has very little impact on the rest of the game. Other than that, everything else is allowed. Now, without further ado, let's get into the run. After making my Shepard, I'm confronted with 2 of the biggest choices of the run, our class and our personal skill. Although Legendary Edition allows all classes to use any weapon, specifically for aiming, I still decided on choosing Soldier as it's the only class that gives you access to medium armor from the start of the game. This lets me have slightly higher shields and damage protection. I also gain access to Overkill, which lets me deal massive damage to multiple targets in a short time. For my personal skill, I chose Lift. Lift allows me to take at least one opponent out of the fight, letting me either focus all of my damage on them, or to attack a more dangerous target. Singularity also does this, but at level 1 Singularity can't lift up Krogan, Geth Destroyers, or Geth Juggernauts, but Lift can. I also choose to be a Spacer and a Soul Survivor. This doesn't really matter, but I thought I would mention it just so everyone knew. After a brief chat with Joker and Kaidan, Captain Anderson calls me to the comm room, where I'm given a mission brief on the planet we are heading to, Eden Prime. However, before we finish, we get a distress call from the planet, hastening our speed to save the colony there. Right as I touch the ground, I check how many skill points I can use on myself and each of my squad mates. Shepard is able to use 3 skill points while each of my squad mates can use 2. Before I get the chance to even make a plan, Jenkins runs off ahead, quickly getting gunned down to his death. We clean up the enemies who attacked us and check on Jenkins' body. I tell Kaidan we'll come back for his remains, but for now, the mission comes first. He understands and we push on. After another fast fight, I meet Ashley Williams, probably the worst squad mate for this run. She has no meaningful abilities for us to use, and I can't even give other squad mates her armor, as she's the only other human character who has access to medium armor at the start of the game. Through the rest of the mission, I open as many storage boxes as I can, as after Eden Prime, I barely get any other equipment to use for the entire game. The only real items of note I get here are the assault rifles I end up getting and the armor-piercing ammo rounds, as I can deal more damage to Geth. After stopping Saren's plan to explode the Prothean beacon we came for, Ashley gets too close to it, which responds by trying to pick her up. Shepard throws Ashley to the side, getting caught up in the beacon's field. Shepard sees some random images just before the beacon explodes. After waking up on the Normandy, we head to the Citadel where I tell the Council Saren's a traitor. They tell me that unless I can prove Saren was the leader of the attack on Eden Prime, I'm out of luck. I conveniently find a cop working on the case, a bounty hunter who somehow knows the dude he's going to kill has info on Saren, and Tali. For skill points, I give Garrus a point to Assault Rifle and Turian Agent, Rex got points to Barrier and Krogan Battlemaster, and I use Tali's 2 skill points in Decryption. After telling the Council that their Super Space Cop is actually bad with evidence this time, they promote me to Super Space Cop to hunt him down. Back on the Normandy, I have to make another huge decision. Because enemies only get harder as the game goes on, I have to choose which missions to do right away and which missions to do later when the enemies will be more unforgiving. Between Therum, Noveria, and Pharos, I decide to go with Therum to get Liara as soon as possible, as getting another squad mate with biotic abilities may be invaluable. Most of the mission is very easy after learning a couple enemy spawns. The only fight of note is just before entering the mine. This is the first encounter with Geth Stalkers, annoying enemies that when shot at, jump away to another area. While they typically aren't too bad to fight against, they do make this particular part harder because of the Geth armature in the back of the area, meaning I have to stay in cover more often. However, thanks to some patience, well-timed melees, and ability uses, I get through this section after only a few tries. After breaking Liara out, we are then confronted with our first Krogan of the run. Thanks to Lift and Overkill, this fight is fairly trivialized as I can remove all of his Geth forces and then focus all of my damage on him. Back on the ship, I get to again choose which missions to go to. While Noveria probably was the smarter of the two missions to go to, I decided on going to Pharos first. And let me tell you, Pharos is easy. The first couple of fights aren't hard in the slightest, and even the fights in the Exogeny base prove to be rather trivial. I do the extra quest for the colonists and Exogeny employees, and after taking down the Geth ship, I decide to help save the colonists rather than kill them. My big fear, and the reason I originally chose Pharos, was that I thought level 1 shotguns wouldn't have enough force to knock down the Thorian creepers. This, however, wasn't the case, and I bullied all of the Thorians and easily saved all of the remaining colonists. The tunnels leading up to the Thorian were a little more challenging thanks to the Asari commandos. However, even then, I could still blast my way through the rest of the mission fairly quickly. I gained the Cypher, let the final Asari live, and headed back to the Normandy. Before heading to Noveria, I stopped to talk to Rex. Something I haven't been mentioning is that after the Citadel, Therum, and now Pharos, I've been talking to Rex before starting every new mission. This allows me to gain access to his personal quest, in which I have to help him hunt down his family armor. After reaching the planet and grabbing Rex, we enter the area where the armor is being stored and prepare for one of the hardest fights I've gone through thus far. See, unlike low-class Geth and Thorians, most humanoid enemies don't get knocked down to simple melee attacks. Along with shield boost, immunity, and carnage, many of these mercenary enemies that litter the game's side quests are actually sorta hard to beat. This, of course, is the case for this mission. My first few tries ended in failure, and only after camping in front of the opening doorway did I finally get through the main group of enemies. After cleaning up the last few stragglers, I get Rex's armor form, and am given the option to go to either Noveria to hunt down Matriarch Benezia, or Virmire, where some Solarian Black Ops members released a distress call. I decide to go after Benezia first and save Virmire for last. Normally, after getting to Noveria, you are tasked by Gianna Parsini to help her get info on her boss that allows her to arrest him. However, this sadly requires Charm to do correctly, and so I couldn't help her. Instead, I decided to rat out a Hanar who's trying to smuggle advanced weaponry into the port and bring it to Gianna's boss. He gives me a garage pass, allowing me to leave the port in a much faster time. After driving through the mountains, I arrive at Peak 15. I go through a couple of fights, restart the main core, and restart the station's functions. This opens up the rest of Peak 15, letting me take a tram to the final area of the mission. I do a favor for the doctor at the facility to gain access to the maintenance tunnels, allowing me to avoid killing the security at Peak 15 and instead head straight to Benezia. This fight is truly one of the hardest fights in the game at level 1. In a normal playthrough, you typically have tons of abilities along with better equipment, letting you quickly get rid of Benezia's forces. However, because I don't have any of that stuff and the squad AI is really bad at dealing with more than one target a lot of the time, I died here a lot. The first phase is pretty easy as it's just 2 Asari commandos without anything else, allowing me to overkill one of them and slowly whittle away the other. The second phase, though, has 2 commandos along with multiple Geth. The best strategy I found here is to bait the Asari over to your side, and then after killing them, you deal with the rest of the Geth. This strategy always ended up with both of my squad mates dead going into the final phase, however, which is definitely the hardest phase. The final phase has Geth attack from 2 separate sides of the room, and also adds a Geth Destroyer into the room, a highly aggressive and bulky enemy. The best strat I found to get past this part is that when the phase starts, you are already on the side of the room that doesn't have the Destroyer spawn, using melee attacks to down all of the enemies and quickly dispatch them. Then you turn towards the Geth Destroyer, using lift and overkill to kill it as fast as possible as it flies through the air. After killing it, you turn your attention to the last couple of Geth and slowly remove the rest of them. After the fight, we have a quick conversation with Benezia. She warns us about Saren's indoctrinations before falling to it again, forcing us to kill her. I also get to decide the fate of the Rachni Queen. I decided on saving her, and then we leave the room and go to the Hot Labs, the final part of Noveria. Here, we purge the rest of the facility, causing Rachni to flood the room, blocking the exit. I used Liara's throw and my lift to clear a path, and then sprinted towards the exit, which luckily I escaped with a sliver of my health, finishing Noveria. Finally was Virmire. Thankfully, this mission actually is a lot easier than Noveria, as it's way more open, letting me slowly pick off enemies from a distance. I quickly got to the Solarian camp, where we learn that Saren is planning to create an army of Krogan he can use against the rest of the galaxy, which makes Rex question if maybe Saren is actually the good guy in this situation. This is why we got Rex's family armor. In a normal playthrough, you can skip getting the armor if you have a high enough Paragon or Renegade reputation, letting you convince Rex that Saren is still definitely bad. However, just like before, I can't use Paragon or Renegade almost ever. But if you have Rex's family armor, you can still convince Rex to trust you without the use of any reputation points, making him stand down. After getting him to stand down, we have to have one of Ashley or Kaidan go with the Solarian group. I chose Kaidan for reasons you'll understand later. I decided to bring Tali and Rex for this part of the mission. Most of the mission is pretty tedious and boring, as many of the fights are solved by either going in and out of doors or by sniping enemies from long ranges. However, right after talking to Sovereign, Tali just decides to leave. Right at this elevator, she just completely disappeared. Luckily, it was at the end of the second phase of the mission, but she still abandoned me and Rex for a complete fight. Uncool, Tali. Uncool. Anyways, Ashley plants a bomb, Kaidan gets pinned down, and we go to rescue him before nuking the facility. This of course doesn't work out, and Ashley arms the bomb to go off early, giving us only enough time to rescue either her or Kaidan. I choose to save Kaidan, as I was going to save him anyways, and now I get the support from him and the Solarians against the Geth and Saren. This is still definitely one of the harder fights in the game, even though you only need to get Saren to half health to complete it. It took me 4 tries, and the only reason I got through was because he started spinning around in circles like a Beyblade. We escape the base in the Normandy, leaving Ashley behind. After the mission, Liara joins her mind with Shepard's to see his vision, and helps us figure out that the Conduit, what Saren has been after this whole time, is on Ilos. However, before heading there, the Council tells us to return to the Citadel. Once we arrive and speak to them, however, they impound the Normandy and pretty much tell Shepard that they have it covered despite not knowing the true gravity of the situation at hand. Back on the ship, Joker tells us to meet with Anderson as he might know a way for us to get the Normandy flying again. We don't question Anderson's methods, and we escape before anyone could figure out what was even happening. We use this opportunity to head to Ilos, which starts the endgame. The start of the mission is simple enough. Kill some Geth, move to a new area. Kill more Geth, go down an elevator. However, this elevator secretly houses what I consider to be the fourth, if not third hardest boss fight in the entire game, the Geth Prime. Very few locations in the game house these very powerful enemies, this one being the only mandatory one you have to fight in the main story. They get dampening, overload, hex shield, shield boost, morale boost which buffs its allies, and radar jamming. And this enemy used to be tougher. Prior to Legendary Edition, they also had access to Distortion Rocket. The room the Geth Prime is in also has 2 destroyers and multiple smaller Geth. Normally, the intended route is to hack the armature stations so that they attack each other, but because of how low my electronic skill is, I'm unable to do this for this fight. After dealing with all of the enemies but the Prime, I then slowly had it approach me, allowing myself to hurt it as it advanced. Then, once it got too close, I used Lift, disabling it, giving me just enough time to finish it off. After this fight, however, Ilos progresses as normal. I drive the Mako, meet Vigil, drive some more, race into a mass relay implanted in the earth, and then ruin some Geth's day. Back on the Citadel, I make my way towards the Citadel Tower. But before I get up the whole thing, the elevator stops, forcing me and my squad to do a 6 spacewalk to the final confrontation. This part is very doable so long as you're being very patient during the turret sections, but some of the long corridors did have destroyers, juggernauts, and Krogan, so I did have to use some careful power placements in those spots. Once we reach the Counselor's Chamber, we just kill a couple more Geth, and we begin the final fight. Normally, you can convince Saren that he's indoctrinated, causing the first part of this fight to be skipped. However, once again, thanks to not having enough reputation points, I can't do this, meaning I have to fight him here. This is definitely the hardest boss fight of the entire game. Harder than Benezia, harder than the first Saren fight, harder than the Geth Prime, and harder than the fight right after this. Saren has many terrifying abilities such as Carnage and Sabotage, as well as shield boost to keep him healthy. He can also get around quickly with his hoverboard, making camping in a corner hard, and even summons enemies to fight for him, one of which being a Geth Destroyer. Honestly, there is no strategy. The only one I could come up with is to hide in these 2 areas closest to where you talk to the Council normally, and melee any Geth that comes nearby. It isn't effective a lot of the time, but with luck you can survive long enough to deplete Saren of his reinforcements. It took me over 6 tries to finally beat him, and even then, part of the reason I was able to win this fight was because he got stuck behind a wall where he couldn't shoot me, but I could shoot him. However, after finally killing him, I choose to save the Council. Sovereign takes over Saren's body, leaving you to do one more boss fight. Unlike the fight I just finished, this one is way easier, but more time consuming. So long as you're only attacking Saren when his Geth aren't around, you can definitely finish this fight. After what feels like an eternity, I finally put the final bullet into Saren. After a couple of final cutscenes and choosing to let Anderson become the first human counselor, I leave the Citadel, learning that you can, in fact, beat Mass Effect 1 at level 1-ish. Also, real quick, now that the video is over, I wanted to mention that I'm planning on doing the rest of the trilogy, as well as Mass Effect Andromeda, so if you don't want to miss those runs, subscribe, and while you're down there, maybe give a like if you enjoyed the video. If you want to catch me doing these runs live, as well as many other games, go follow my Twitch channel at KC_Rain, as I'm hoping to hit affiliate and partner this year. Anyways, that's going to do it for me today. Hope you all have a good one, and peace.